Hello, folks. This is my first update for today for Empowering Democracy. Thank you for coming. I am very glad to be here. Hello, CC Swift or Break. Happened to catch this, but nobody's here. Yes, people are not quite used to this new schedule I'm doing, which doesn't involve any regular times. So while this is kind of a time around which I stream, uh, still people have to pick up on it. So CC Swift says, "Oh, hi, Fuzzy Wuzzy. Nice to see you." Steve Day says, "Hello. Hello, Steve Day. How are you? Okay, it's nice to see you." So the main topic for this stream is Republican campaign lies. There was a nice piece by Robert Reich that he put out not long ago. I'm just trying to get it on the screen for you. Hang on a second. I was a little rushed here today, so I didn't have this already set up. Anyway, it was a nice piece from Common Dreams. I thought he organized it very well. I don't do a lot of pieces from Bob Reich because he and I don't share some key economic assumptions. But the title of this one is The Big Lie. GOP has some other midterm whoppers up its sleeve. And here's a picture of Kevin McCarthy speaking at a press conference on November 17th, 2020. Well, here would be a picture if I were appropriately sharing it, which I will do in just a moment now. There we go. I think you're seeing it now. You're seeing a corner of it now. You'll be seeing the picture in just a few seconds. So there's Kevin McCarthy with his nice haircut. Is that a charcoal gray suit? Yeah, probably a charcoal gray suit. Anyway, this was done on October 17th by Robert Reich. Came from his Substack, was picked up by Common Dreams. He said, "It's not just a big lie. Republicans are telling three other lies they hope will swing the midterms. They involve crime, inflation, and taxes. Here are the GOP's claims, followed by the facts." So what Bob is doing here is he's focusing on the three things the Republicans, are running on. Something Thom Hartmann calls the threes, the power of the threes. They took basically three issues and they're running on the three issues. There's their perennial issue of taxes. Taxes are too high. We need taxes, tax cuts. to be done, okay, especially for the rich, of course. Then there's inflation. This inflation is Joe Biden's and the Democrats' fault. And the cost of living is so high, and that's bad for people. And then there's crime. There's a terrible crime wave currently. It's because the Democrats are soft on crime. Here's the claim that crime is rising because Democrats have been soft on it, quote, unquote. Now, last I knew, Joe Biden hasn't even been president for 2 years. And the Congress, of course, is very narrowly Democratic. Yet the rise in crime is because the Democrats are soft on it. There wouldn't have been a rise in crime if Democrats weren't soft on it. Well, I haven't seen all those Republicans in Congress actually mobilizing to fight crime or putting in bill after bill after bill aimed at fighting the crime. I suspect that with the kind of Congress we have, and with the crazy people on both sides we have, that if the Republicans came forth with a reasonable crime bill, they could probably get at least 10 to 15 Democrats with them on that crime bill, and probably the president as well, because he's always been hard on those who are, quote, soft on crime. Anyway, the GOP tweets, Joe Biden and Democrats have caused rising crime and rising costs to impact every American. Vote Republican in November for a change. Bob Rice says, rubbish. Rising crime rates are due to the proliferation of guns, which Republicans refuse to control. While violent crime rose 28% from 2019 to 2020, gun homicides rose 35%. States that have weakened gun laws have seen gun crime surge. Clearly, a major driver of the national increase in violence is the easy availability of guns. And Rice's general statement again, rising crime rates are due to the proliferation of guns, which Republicans refuse to control. The violence can't be explained by any of the Republican talking points about, quote, soft on crime, unquote, Democrats. Lack of police funding? No. On average, all cities, whether run by Democrats or Republicans, saw an increase in police funding in 2022. Criminal justice reforms? No. Whatever bail reforms have been implemented, the rearrest rates remain stable. Data shows no connection between the policies of progressive prosecutors and changes in crime rates. In fact, crime is rising faster in Republican, Trump-supporting states. In 2020, per capita murder rates were 40% higher in states won by Trump than in those won by Joe Biden. I certainly don't think that the governors of those states or the legislatures in those states that were won by Trump were soft on crime compared to other states. I'm sure they made sure the police were amply well funded in those states, and I'm sure the police were not soft on the would-be criminals either. having slaughtered more than their fair share of folks. Anyway, Republican policies have made it easier for people to get and carry guns. And Republicans are lying about the real cause of rising crime to protect some of their biggest supporters, big gun manufacturers, and the NRA. Two, Republicans claim that inflation is due to Biden's spending and wage increases. And Bob says, baloney. Biden's spending can't be causing our current inflation because inflation has broken out everywhere around the world, often at much higher rates than in the U.S. Whether or not the various nations had excessive spending or not. Besides, heavy spending by the U.S. government began in 2020 before the Biden administration in order to protect Americans and the economy from the ravages of COVID-19, and it was necessary. Wages can't be pushing inflation because wages have been increasing at a slower pace than prices, leaving most workers worse off. We know it's not wages that have been pushing inflation. We know that it's been price gouging. And it's been the oligopolies in the international system, specifically the nations whose oil companies have been raising the price of oil or have been cutting the supply. We, of course, have made very little efforts in the way of stopping the rise in the price of oil. I'm not sure how we can do about that anyway. But one thing we could have done, perhaps, is to threaten the Saudis with cutting off support for them, in the war with Yemen. We certainly could have done that. I don't know if Biden did do that. He did make some vague threat about there will be consequences. But when you don't say what the consequences are, then you don't have much effect on the other side. The major cause of the current inflation is the global post-pandemic shortage of all sorts of things, coupled with Putin's war in Ukraine and China's lockdowns. Well, that's not good enough. You got to mention the price gouging because it's been going on all over the place, and the administration has been refusing to take the regulatory and taxing measures that would be necessary to stop it. In a press release, NRCC says Biden's American Rescue Plan caused the inflation crisis. The numbers show that most of the government spending came earlier, and Republicans share as much responsibility as Democrats for that. And here's a PolitiFact.com truth meter rating this as mostly false. I'll click on that. Oh, there's Rick Scott, who's putting this out, of course. Rick Scott always puts out lies. Thanks to the insane tax and spending spree of President Joe Biden and Democrats in Washington, we are seeing 6 straight months of raging inflation. I hate to tell you, schmuck, but if it was about the taxing, that wouldn't be causing inflation. That would be dampening down inflation by draining money out of the economy, as any fool knows. Except, of course, you, Rick Scott. So, Rick Scott. If anybody believes anything that Rick Scott has to say, they have surely totally screwed up. I don't know what I have here. I somehow have WordPress up. I have no idea why I have WordPress up, but let me get rid of that. There we go. I got rid of that. You should be seeing the Bob Reich article again. Yeah, here it is. The biggest domestic culprit for America's current inflation is big corporations that are using inflation as an excuse for raising prices above their own cost increases, resulting in the highest profit margins since 1950, while consumers are paying through the nose. Yes, that's price gouging. I would have thought he would have mentioned it before. The biggest domestic cause of inflation is corporate power. Republicans are lying about this to protect their big corporate patrons. Well, Reich is absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that. But in all honesty, we have to say that the growth of corporate power is also due to the Democrats. They've been feeding at the corporate trough too, especially since the 1990s. They've done nothing to stem the rise of corporate power all through this period of time. They've been gleefully accepting the donor money and selling out the people. So this is not only about the Republicans, it's about what the Democrats have done for many, many years too. But it's a background process that's been happening for many, many years. It became a cause of inflation because having that corporate power and seeing the opportunity to price gouge and to blame it on the general process of inflation, all the big companies started charging what the traffic would bear. And yes, that has been a major cause of inflation. I personally think that other than the supply chain disruptions, which were very relevant about a year ago, or a year and a half ago, the main cause of inflation above that has been the price gouging. And then, of course, we have the latest contributions from Ukraine war, which have pushed the price of oil and fossil fuel energy higher. 3, Republicans say Democrats voted to hire an army of IRS agents who will audit and harass the middle class. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wrong. The IRS won't be going after the middle class, says Bob Reich. It will be going after ultra wealthy tax cheats. Well, I hope you're right about that, Bob. You very well may be right about that. The extra staff are needed, Bob says, to prevent high-end tax evasion, which is more difficult to root out. The ultra wealthy hire squads of accountants and tax attorneys to hide their taxable incomes. It's estimated that the richest 1% are hiding more than 20% of their earnings from the IRS. I'm surprised that number is so small. I would have expected it would be something like 80% of their earnings. And I don't know if their earnings, it's more like their rent. The Treasury Department and the IRS have made it clear that audit rates for households earning $400,000 or under will remain the same. Well, that's probably true, folks. As long as Biden is in office and the Democrats are running the Congress. But look for those audit rates to change. If you vote in the Republicans, look for those audit rates to change. Republicans are lying about what the IRS will do with the new funding to protect their ultra wealthy patrons. Yeah, I think they are. None of these three lies is as brazen and damaging as Trump's big lie, says Bob, but they're all being used by Republican candidates in these last weeks before the midterms. Know the truth and share it. Yes, know the truth and share it. Okay, I'm going to be back about 5 o'clock. And when I come back, I'm going to be talking about Dems losing. Also, broadening strategy, question mark. There's a lot of ferment among Democratic strategists and campaigners right now about the failed strategy, the failing strategy that they've been following. That strategy is basically to campaign on abortion rights and to campaign on anti-Trump stuff. And those two emphases have not been serving them well of late. For a while, after the decision of the Supreme Court, public opinion was shifting towards the Dems. And at one point in the polling, they were as much as 5 or 6 points ahead of the Republicans because they were running on those two things. But then those two things ceased to work as people felt the bite of inflation and as people felt the increasing crime. Then the Republican issues began to gain more relevance on the part of people. That's when we saw that this focus on just those two issues by the Democrats wasn't actually cutting it, because the Republicans began to rise again, and now they seem to have an advantage in the generic poll of 4 points. A 4-point advantage on the generic poll and the built-in advantages they have from gerrymandering and voter suppression translate into a Republican landslide in the House in the fall. If the Dems are going to stay even, they need 7-point lead on the generic poll. So in the next 3 weeks, they have to pick up then something like 11 points in the generic polls. A tall order, not impossible. The reason why I say it's not impossible, because on at least one of the key issues in September, the Democrats had a 14-point lead over the Republicans. And in the same October poll, suddenly the Republicans were 18 points ahead. It doesn't look like that's a solid 18 points. It sounds like, to me, like people are undecided about some of the key issues, particularly the economic issues, and that there is an opportunity for the Democrats, by changing their strategy, to turn things around. But they got to be vigorous about it. They got to make a decision, and they got to throw their money out of it. They have plenty of money. They've been taking plenty of donor money. And in the latest fundraising figures, which we'll be covering on Thursday, you will see that they are out raising money. They're out raising the Republicans when it comes to money. Now, I don't know if they're going to continue to have a lead when the super PACs really get going over the next 2 or 3 weeks, but it seems like they still have a chance to catch up if they spend that money on the new emphases, specifically the economic emphases, the real causes of inflation, what they will do if they get into office again. But this is now premature. I'll be discussing this at roughly 5 o'clock. So look for me at around 5 o'clock or so, 5:30 in there. I'll be back and I'll be talking about the change in strategy on the part of the Democrats. I'll also be back at 9 o'clock today when I'll be talking about interest rate terrorism. What that's about is not so much the rise in interest rates being caused by the Federal Reserve, at least not a direct effect of that, but the whole issue of, we have to be very, very afraid because since the Fed is raising the interest rates, then the interest rates, the interest being paid by the federal government is going to eat up the federal budget in the coming years, and we won't be able to afford anything else because the interest rates are rising so much. So you've got these people coming out and saying that's going to be a terrible problem. We won't be able to do anything discretionary. And remember, military spending is discretionary. Healthcare spending is very often discretionary. A lot of other things, and most in the budget, is discretionary. And if the interest rates really eat up of the money in the budget, these terrorists are saying we won't be able to afford to do anything. I'll be talking about that at 9 o'clock tonight. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you later. Hope you enjoyed this little stream. A couple of good comments. Biden is just now releasing petrol reserves. Why couldn't have been doing that all along? He has been doing it for quite some time, but he's releasing more again. CC Swift has got a lot of comments here. Hey, Kay, how you doing? CC Swift says, I try to catch up after work, but it's hard to sort the order of your clips. Could you label them like number 1, 2, 3, and add the date? I thought they were dated. I don't know why they wouldn't be dated. I'll look into it, CC, see what I can do. That's crazy because the seditionists that stormed the Capitol were Republicans. Yeah. They were mainly Republicans or Libertarians, I think. CC says, have you seen the stellar chart-busting job Katie Porter did with dispelling the inflation myth with her charts in yesterday's news? She broke it down. Well, I will take a look at it. I've seen, a number of other breakdowns. What is it called? The Institute for Economic the Policy, I think. That's not the exact name of it. It's one of the leftier think tanks, specializes, in economics. And they've been breaking it down actually right along. She might be getting her data from them. CC Swift says, briefly saw that paychecks will be higher due to raising inflation and interest rates, but didn't have time to read the article. Yeah, something like that is starting to happen. Of course, Social Security payments are going to be higher as well. CC Swift says, so great to catch your live stream again. Finally, someone with good sense. Thank you, CC. Thank you. Biden is just now releasing petro reserves. Viking along. Case says, if their lips are moving, they are lying. I've heard that before. It's one of the better ones. Just saw a headline by The Guardian. Bannon's disturbing quest to radically rewrite the U.S. Constitution made me think about your live stream I saw late last night. I didn't get off till midnight. Steve Day says, what fun to find common ground with Reich. Yeah, it is. It is fun. He's a pretty good he's a pretty good guy. He's very likable, you know. Okay, I got to end the broadcast now and get on with some other things, so I'm ready at 5 or 5:30 for that stream. Anyway, have a good afternoon, and I'll see you in the late afternoon.